Greetings Marines, FiOth here, and in this vid we will be breaking down our strat for tackling 3-1 on extreme with a They'll Breed You'll Die card. A They'll Breed You'll Die card means that you get more enemies in each encounter, and since this is extreme, people usually expect these vids to include some kind of buff card like human tanks, superior firepower, extraordinary weaponry, and so on and so forth. This is actually a debuff card, making the whole situation much harder, and what I'm trying to prove here is not how good I am at playing the game, me or my crew, is that if the strats are down, are correctly implemented, it is very much possible to tackle the challenge at hand. So we started up there by placing the turret near the cracked wall. That gave us an advantage in DPS against a stationary attacker that could not be counterattacked by the Xenos. The Technician's turret, if handled correctly, is one of the greatest assets in this game. It's like having a fourth player sometimes. It draws a ton of aggro and eliminates prioritization of the players by the Xenos and enemies in general. The enemies will usually go after the turret before they come after you, and that is a huge boon. Now, as you saw there, we also had pretty extensive usage of grenades. This team configuration consists of 1 tech and 2 gunners. I suggest you use my Vanguard build for the gunner. Very powerful grenade, CC, and overall control of the battlefield. And here we're gonna employ tactics that's something like door glitching. Basically what you want to do here is trick the game into thinking that you went through the door, but your allies will actually be on the other side of the archway. Here I'm telling them to take a step forward each time until I can use this destroyed synth. It's not technically 100% legit, but it doesn't include any modding, it's just the vanilla game, and if you play it enough you understand some of the tricks involved. It does not stop the enemies from attacking you. It doesn't make things much easier on the damage scale. What it allows you to do is utilize a specific choke point to take out the enemies. Also, in most cases, the Technician's turrets will glitch when you try to employ such methods, so we use the turret advantage to have better crowd control. Here, as you can see, my allies are standing up there. I run back to them. I tell them not to shoot, and as soon as I am back, my second gunner just throws a nade and levels the playing field. Now the Xenos are still trying to destroy the turret there. It's a pretty beefy turret, that one, because it's incendiary, the most resilient of the turrets. Here we have a drone. It jumps my ally from the moment it sees them, but you really have to focus them to take them out. Since we were a man out from the get-go, we did not have the power, so we were waiting for a second run. Always be very careful and very mindful of speeders in situations, because the speeder can surprise you from a distance whilst your attention is drawn towards the melee enemies, and if they manage to land an acid pool on you, you will take a lot of damage if you're not paying close attention. Just a couple of seconds on that pool can take away a huge chunk of your health. On Extreme and Insane, you do not have the leisure of just losing chunks of HP whenever an attack gets sneaked in, so you have to be extra careful. Here the drone attacks again. Of course, as we were expecting it, I had a grenade at the ready. If I wasn't able to kill it right away, I would stun it with disorienting blast that's attached to my active ability and take it out afterwards. It's smooth sailing from here to the other side of this corridor pretty much. So we clear the remaining stragglers here.
Sentry deployed.
Turret putting in some work. Always use active abilities instead of shooting enemies if you can, because saving even that one cell is very important. In a pinch you might not have ammo. On Extreme and Insane, guys, ammo is always an issue. You should never take risks with how much ammo you are expending. Here we got jumped as soon as we entered the room's proximity. That's something that will almost never happen on Intense. It's an extra fight before you can get to the ammo. And here I'm the only one going in, grabbing ammo, and going back to hold the door. We're gonna employ pretty much the same strategy. I'm gonna explain exactly why in a moment. Like, saying things that can get pretty hectic is an understatement, but here with They'll Breed You'll Die, we also have extra enemies to contend with. It's not just the default amount of enemies that you will get on Extreme. There are extra enemies here, and it gets pretty messy if you're not careful. So they start pouring in. I'm calling for my tech to just voltaic the ground, use his coils. You need to spread the coils evenly and pace yourself when using them. You do not want to use the coils to do any amount of damage. They're very, very weak on that regard, but you want them there just to touch the enemy, just to activate that slow debuff. And also the technician, if they're running the correct build, will be able to deal extra damage to any slowed enemies, so that's a huge plus for them. Here you can see that the AI gets pretty whacked because it cannot prioritize between the turret and players that are not exactly in its vicinity. But the turret is the catalyst here, and when the turret gets taken out of the equation, things shift dramatically. I'm gonna explain why when we get to that point. So what you see here is still the initial wave. All that stuff we've killed is just the initial wave, and Herrera afterwards calls the second wave, and that's where the warrior will actually spawn. So as you can see here, the turret got pretty jumped, and then the enemies just start pouring in, and there is a lot of them. This card makes the enemy numbers insanely large. Here I got clipped a couple of times, I'm very, very low. You never want to risk going down on Extreme or Insane, guys. You will either die of the bleed out, and the lack of damage that you impose on the team by, well, becoming incapacitated will pretty much always snowball and you'll get screwed. There I just cover my technician to put down a new turret, and I also use a cryo grid because we do not want to be surprised again by the mass of enemies. As you can see, there are guys crawling all over the place, on the ceiling, the blippers going insane. We thin them out and they still are more coming. This room can be very, very challenging if you do not know what to do, but as long as this door technique is still available, I suggest you clear any content that you are missing, because afterwards, if it gets patched, who knows what new strats we'll have to employ in order to make it. For you wondering how this would have been done 100% legit, well, you grab the opposite archway from this position, you put down cryogrids and 1 or 2 turrets if you have 2 techs, and hope for the best. You pretty much have to be on point with your shooting, you have to be on point with your CC, and if for some reason someone gets incapacitated or stopped by the opposition, like you see here, I pretty much dodged it, but it still grabbed me. If this happens and you're inside the room with no choke point to handle the enemies, you're pretty much screwed. It's one player off the equation that will take extreme damage from the warrior, and the other two will have to make a choice between saving them or crowd controlling the enemies. Too many enemies, too little time, too much damage, and you usually end up losing a person and then losing the mission. Here we encountered a glitched enemy. Luckily, that's one of the things that Cold Iron fixed. Now it's a very rare occasion to get stopped mid-mission because an enemy didn't spawn or didn't become available to be taken out. So we just crossed the room here, nothing too eventful. I pointed my tech to just put the turret there. This last fight of this chamber is pretty much risk-free. There is nothing too demanding to do here. Grabbing myself an energy drink. As soon as we have the turret down, we just move to the back of the room, and that will trigger the next wave. A well-built gunner is a huge asset in these scenarios because, as you can see, all the small fries will get destroyed by one toss of the grenade. If you toss the grenade after you build stay on target plus 20% damage, it will also affect your grenade, and that's huge. That 20%, it's actually huge. Staying on target will also bring you back your grenade very fast, and you can continue slaying the hordes of enemies. Suffice it to say, guys, if you fail at controlling this mass of enemies, they're gonna rip you to shreds because on extreme the damage they deal is insane, and even a small runner boasts a lot of HP. Business as usual here, nothing interesting. Now this room can be door tricked again. Any of the further in alcoves will serve as a defensible position, but we just didn't want to risk the extra damage. You can just fortify one of the little alcoves in the back with frost grids and turrets, and since there are no ultras in here, no warriors, no praetorians, no crushers, that'll be enough to stop their advance if you are on point with your damage. Of course, using this technique again here is a given if you can make it work. Fireteam Elite, guys, is very demanding on the last two settings, and I suggest you use every trick in the book to survive them. That's because there are missions that do not include such techniques, like 4-1 or 1-2 or 1-3, that become real nightmares and will take a lot of tries to clear, even if you make the slightest mistake. Better preserve your patience and energy for the actual challenges and blast through the content that you can easily than wither and lose your momentum in these levels that can actually be tackled in a smarter way, let's say, and never have the energy to go and do the actually difficult stuff. You can see how much HP one burster has, which is kinda ridiculous. Sometimes I think about the health pool of these enemies and I'm like, yeah, you reallocate your resources, you change the pace of specific fights, but was it really necessary for a runner to have 2500 HP on insane? Like, the weapon damage doesn't scale, the ability damage doesn't scale, it's not a percentage of the enemy's total HP, so you just end up having to deal with these insanely durable enemies. On insane especially, you are pretty much locked to using buff cards for most of the encounters, and that takes a bit out of the creativity. Like, if they could take the HP down a notch, not the overall difficulty, change nothing about friendly fire, that's totally understandable, nothing about the configurations, but the individual target should have a little less HP in my opinion. Anyway, this is just wishful thinking. We're sticking to the strats here. Now, something that most people do not know is that the fight in the giant headroom doesn't even have to be tricked. The door remains open and just one person has to go in, activate the correct scanner, and then you can just stay here and fight the enemies at the choke point. Here I stuck the prowler with the nade, waited until it was close, and then I activated my remote detonator to have it in shotgun range. Sometimes it's not the best idea to just blast everything at a distance, sometimes you want the enemy to be relatively close for max damage. Keep that in mind for crushers, especially because crushers have a lot of HP, are very durable, and they pretty much have unobtainable crit spots. So I just go out, and instead of staying in and getting slaughtered, we put the turret there. The Xenos really love the turret, they go for it, and we end up killing them nice and clean. Even by employing all these techniques, they still manage to get through the door, at least some of them. It's a testament to how many of the little suckers there are. Like, this card makes their numbers ridiculous, and you need to have some sort of mass area damage or you are going to get swarmed. That's the strongest argument I can make about the superiority of specific classes over others. The gunner specifically is by far the strongest class at the moment, followed by the technician, because their grenade can have both a stun effect and extreme damage effect at the same times, with very short cooldowns thanks to stay on target. Some recalibrations have to be done, especially on the demo, because as it stands it's far inferior to the gunner, but that's a topic for another time.
Major aesthetic shift. A personal area?
This room can also be cleared from the doorway. Here we made a mistake and my allies just stepped in. We did not coordinate it correctly and we had to fight indoors. You can see the results of miscommunication here. I have one person down. It's my other gunner here. I put down the cryogrid to facilitate the revive. The revive gets stopped. I lose another player. And due to the whole mess that was happening at the moment, I did not see the timers correctly, and that was in for our second gunner. This is a two-man operation now. I know you just thought, oh shit, this is getting much more interesting now. And indeed it was. That's why I wanted to publish this vid before any other of our more peculiar runs. Sometimes things seem to have been lost, but I was doing this on stream and I was telling the audience, well, you guys, thanks for watching it again, by the way, those of you who were on the stream, that we are going to make it. And I knew that we were going to make it because I was in a very similar position some time ago, and it was 4-1, the mission that we were running. I lost one of the players really early on, but I was really tired and I wanted to help them power through it, and I was like, we're not quitting, we're gonna get it done. And we ended up beating 4-1 extreme with 2 people. And you know how bad things tend to get in 4-1 extreme and insane. So here I was like, you know what, we're gonna make it. I'm gonna give you a strat, I'm gonna give you a very specific method that you can assist me with CC so I can keep dealing the damage, and we're gonna get through it. 2-man. Of course, I had no how should I put it, I didn't have hope of it turning out to be an easy stride, but I was optimistic about our chances. So we come here, and people usually make the mistake of fortifying this corridor right there that I just looked at. But actually the best position to do this is in here. This is a much longer corridor, nothing comes through here, and you can just fortify it by placing a ton of turrets in the back. Always put your turrets in the back. I cannot stress it enough, guys. There are two reasons for that. One is they will never get aggroed by the very far away enemies that are usually the runners in the initial waves, and you will have ammo on them when you need them. Two, if an enemy gets aggroed by them, they will have to cross all your defenses while they're getting decimated, and you can just pick them off. And three, when the shed hits the fan and you finally get pushed back to said defensive positions, you will still have juice on them to damage the large critters. Runners can be dealt with, but Crushers and Praetorians on Extreme or Insane are a totally different situation. Here I was giving my tech some directions on where to place the voltaics, and I was telling him, pace yourself, always have a carpet of those in front of us, we need the extra slow, and so on and so forth. So the Xenos will start pouring in now. It's almost 2.5 minutes. Even if the timer runs out, you have to clear the room, so there's no skipping any of the fighting here. You have to have a plan up front with your mates to refresh the grids when they expire. And as I said in my vid about how to not suck on Extreme and Insane, no downtime. You can always do something when you're not shooting the enemy. Reload another gun, activate some sort of buff or consumable, refresh a grid, put down an extra turret, use an ability, roll away from danger, give your mate some cover so they can reload or do any of the above. No downtime on Extreme and Insane will get you much farther than perfect shooting. Always do something that is very, very important. So here the Crusher was actually aggroed by the inner turrets, and the time it took it to get there was time that we had to put it down. We're pretty much halfway there now. And of course they keep coming relentlessly.
The door can be opened from this console, but it requires a series of commands.
Here it was just a couple of runners, and then we had to face another wave. This spot that we're defending is kind of tricky for one reason. We are too far away from the ammo box to actually grab ammo when we kill a creature that's close to it, close to the box. It might be like 10 meters, but 10 meters is an eternity in scenarios like this. If you can have a Recon in these situations, it's a godsend. You pretty much have unlimited ammo if they use their support drone consistently. Prowlers, guys, always prio Prowlers and Spitters, because even those 2 to 3 seconds that the Prowler will have you pinned takes away from your team damage, causes extra damage to you. If they try to set you free, they might actually shoot you. You do not want the complications. So here I get smashed into the ground by the Crusher, and I'm calling my mates to give me some cover because I need to heal. As soon as I heal and see the mass of enemies that gathered there because I just took a couple of seconds to breathe, I tell my tech we have to be out of here yesterday, and he follows. You do not have the time to have a conversation with your mates. It has to be clear that one person will have to strategize and the rest will have to trust him and follow suit. We had a couple of seconds here to avoid the Crusher because it was preoccupied with the turrets, and that was time enough for us to actually take out the Spitter threat. Now that the Spitters are out, it's pretty much self-explanatory that this thing has to be kited, and as soon as you have him where you want him and he cannot follow both players, it's a melee unit, you pretty much know that you have managed to beat the level. So that was it, guys, a step-by-step walkthrough of Recon 3-1 on Extreme with an extra debuff to the team, that's They'll Breathe, You'll Die, one of the most potent cards to use on the opposition to strengthen them. And as you can see, we 2-manned the final battle and we managed to beat it. Let me know if you found this interesting so I can upload more stuff like this. Sub, like, and share for more Aliens, Fireteam Elite, and of course more games are to come. Until next time, be well, stay frosty, and always strive for perfection. Cheers!